longer definition of that. And then the Adhyatma, the nature of the living entity. What does that mean, actually? And then what is this Adhidaiva? You know, this Adhibhuta. What is that, actually? The governing principle of the material nature, including the demigods. And the Adhibhuta and the Adhidaiva, actually, these demigods, you know, are they part of the universal form or what? And then the Adhiyagya, who is actually the beneficiary of all sacrifices. So Arjuna wants these terms a bit more closely defined, and therefore he asks at the beginning of the 8th chapter, what are these terms actually? And one by one, Krishna answers the questions, very briefly actually, but very succinctly and very carefully to give us a clear understanding of what these terms mean. But the rest of the chapter is devoted to Arjuna's 7th question, because Krishna said, the one who understands me as the Adhibhuta, the Adhiyagya, and the Adhidaiva can know me even at the time of death, which is a very disturbing circumstance. So therefore, Arjuna's last question is, how are those who are your devotees engaged in your devotional service, how can they remember you at the time of death? Which is a very important thing, actually. If we have any hope of going back to God, then we have to be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. And therefore, we see that this chapter is entitled Attaining the Supreme, how we can attain the Supreme. So most of the chapter is devoted to Arjuna's last question. How can those who are your devotees know you at the time of death? But there are two classes of persons who can know Krishna at the time of the death. One is the devotee, the Ananya devotee, the one who's not alloyed, not mixed with anything, is pure devotion, like that. And then there's another class that Krishna introduced at the end of the 7th chapter. He's called a different kind of Sakam Bhakta. He wants something. He's a devotee, basically, but he wants something. So in the 7th chapter, we discussed 3 kinds of Mishra Bhaktas. They want something. The first, in the 16th verse of the 7th chapter, that is, we first of all learned that there's one who wants relief from material distress. He may approach Krishna and begin devotional service, but he wants release from material distress. Then there's another one, he wants money. He wants material wealth, because of difficult condition or whatever he's facing. There's another one who's curious. He's heard about this Krishna and he wants knowledge, like that. And then there's one who just approaches Krishna for knowledge of the absolute, like that. So of these 4, 3 are Mishra Bhaktas. They sometimes approach Krishna for performance of devotional service, but they want something in return. So at the end of the 7th chapter, this 4th kind of Mishra Bhakta is discussed. And the reason he's discussed is he can also attain Krishna under the right circumstances. So these are the 2 classes of persons who can attain the Supreme, hence the title of the chapter. One is a Mishra Bhakta. He's a devotee, but he wants liberation from birth, old age, and disease, those things. So therefore he wants something. And then there's the pure devotee. He can attain Krishna as well, but he doesn't want anything. He just wants to please Lord Krishna, actually. So these 2 are compared in this chapter. We're going to look at that, actually. So what we looked up in the first 4 verses, actually, the questions Arjuna is asking about these 6 terms, Karma, Brahman, Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhiyagya. These 6 terms are asked about, and then the 7th question also. So in the beginning, the verses 3 and 4, Krishna quickly answers these questions, and we can take a look because it will connect us with what's going on in this chapter. We can just take a look at those verses 3 and 4. Arjuna asks in 1 and 2, 5 questions in the first verse and 2 in the last. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is self? What are fruitive activities? What is material manifestation? And what are the demigods? So it's 5 out of the 6 questions. And then in the 2nd verse, who is the Lord of sacrifice, the Adhiyagya? The person who is the beneficiary of all sacrifices, and how does he live in the body? So these are the 6 questions, and there's a kind of corollary there. Who is this Adhiyagya, and how does he live in the body? And then the question for the remainder of the chapter. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Because it's very important. For a devotee, actually, just wants Krishna. So how to know at the time of death? So in 3 and 4, Krishna answers the first 6 questions briefly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman. Because we are Brahman. Actually, we're made of the same substance as the Supreme Lord. We're made of spiritual nature. So we're Brahman, actually. That's our real identity. When we consider ourselves separate from the body, that's our real identity. So the nature of the living entity is Brahman, actually, eternal, ever existing, eternally individual, pleasure seeking, nothing to do with this body. Then his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. The eternal nature of the living being actually is that he is eternal, he is pleasure seeking, he's full of knowledge, and he's a servant. This is actually the Adhyatma, the nature of the living entity. That's actually the self, what we really are actually. When we strip this covering of the body off, two coverings, gross body, subtle body. When we remove that and we get down to what the self really is, then actually that is the real nature of ourselves. And what are we in that nature? We're actually the servant of Krishna. Action pertaining to the development of material bodies of the living entities is called karma. That's what it is, actually. It's such a nice definition, because when we perform activities, karmic activities, we therefore get a material reaction, and therefore we have to accept another body to receive it. So therefore, one deep definition of karma is it is activity which generates another material body. Good or bad, karma can be good, it can be bad. Karma is good, you get a better position. Karma not so good, you sink. But in either case, you get a material body. So Krishna is giving a broad definition. What is karma? It is that activity which produces another material body. Fruit of activity that causes another material body. So this is 3. And then 4, O best of the embodied beings, the physical nature, which is constantly changing. That is when we wake up in the morning, we open our eyes, that's what we see. The physical nature, the prakriti, and it is constantly changing, endlessly mutable, actually. It never stands still. That is the difference between the material and the spiritual nature. The spiritual nature is ever steady, doesn't change. It is what it is. But the material nature, on the other hand, is constantly changing under all circumstances. So that is the material manifestation. And we can see that. We have that experience ourselves, that it's always changing. Even things which appear not to change. The crystal lattice is vibrating. You know, if you come back in 1,000 years, what you're looking at now won't exist anymore. The elements will have dissipated, gone to other places. So the material nature is the Adibhuta, it is constantly changing. The universal form of the Lord, which includes the demigods, like those of the sun and moon, is called the Adidaiva. Daiva from Deva. Deva means the demigods. They're the Lord's Angas. They are part of this material manifestation. They're department heads. They're operating different things within the material universe. So that is called the Adidaiva. And then I, Krishna says, is the Supersoul represented in the heart of every living body. It's called the Adiyagya. He's the beneficiary. The ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices, actually, is the Adiyagya. And where is he? He resides in the body as the Supersoul. So in this way, Krishna has cleared these answers to the first 6 questions. And then we remain with the 7th question, which is very important and concerns us for the rest of the chapter. Hence, the chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. So we're concerned with this last question for the rest of the chapter. How can those, who are your devotees, how can they know you at the time of death? How is that possible? How can they face with that situation? How can they possibly know you? So this is what Krishna is discussing. So first, Krishna starts at the top. When we're giving instruction, actually teachers know that when you're instructing your students, you must start with the highest. Give them the highest level, because human nature is if we set the bar here, then we'll probably come here somewhere. So Krishna starts at the top, just like when he's discussing devotional service, he starts at the top. You'll see that when we come to the 12th chapter. So here Krishna says, and whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone. That's the key thing, actually. If you remember nothing but Krishna at the time of death, then you can attain him. So this is a short form answer to that question. How can one know you? How can your devotees know you at the time of death? They simply have to remember me without deviation, actually. Only, nothing but Krishna. And if we can do that, then we will attain to his superior nature. We'll go back to the spiritual world. So Krishna says to underline the point here. He says, of this there is no doubt. And we find this in several places in Bhagavad Gita. Just think of me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's how you should do it. Later on in 9th chapter, Krishna says, just always engage your mind in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Worship me. Offer your obeisances to me. Being fully absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. And at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says the same thing again. Just engage your mind and always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your obeisances to me. Certainly you'll come to me. I'm telling you this because you're my very dear friend. So this is an essential verse we're going to look at a little later. This is an essential verse. And the one we're going to look at today, 14, is also essential in terms of this principle. Actually, Krishna is very easy to attain if we can simply remember him alone at the time of death. Of course, the problem is that takes practice because we think of so many things. If you try and focus your mind on Krishna, here's how it works for us. We try and think of Krishna and we wind up thinking of something else and we can't figure out how that happened. You might try that sometime. Try sitting thinking of Krishna and you watch how your mind wanders. And then after a couple of seconds, you'll think, now, how did that happen? That I was thinking of Krishna, I started to think of something else. But when we become advanced, actually what happens is we think of something and it reminds us of Krishna and we wind up thinking of Krishna. So that's how we want to be. But when we're practicing in our stage of sadhana bhakti, then what happens is we're thinking of Krishna and we think of something else and we don't really know how it happened. But this is the practice that we have to perform. And Krishna is assuring us here in this verse, if you remember me alone, certainly you'll come to me, without a doubt. And then just to underline this point, Krishna points out, whatever you think of at the time of death, you'll get that. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body as son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Therefore, we have to be very, very careful what we think of. And this is why during life, we have to train ourselves, think of Krishna as much as possible. So that then if we can do that, then when we come to the end of our life and the most important thing in our consciousness surfaces, we find it's Krishna because that's how we spend our life. Otherwise, whatever your deepest attachments are will come out at the time of death. However you've lived your life, that is what we'll think of at the time of death. So therefore now we have to practice. And then, having told us that we must think of him, then Krishna says this, you should always think of me. Just to make sure we got the point, because good public speakers do that. And Krishna is the best public speaker. When they train you in public speaking, they say, you should say what you're going to say. You should say it. Then you should say what you said. And the reason for that is people only remember 15% of what you say. You can try that. If you're a public speaker, you know that actually. Therefore, repetition is required. And Krishna does it in the most wonderful way. Here he's saying in the 7th verse, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in my form of Krishna, not as anyone else. Because Krishna is the source of all incarnations. He is the original Godhead. So if we can, best to think of him, because he's the topmost. And at the same time, carry out the prescribed duty of fighting, Krishna not letting us off. We can't say, no, I can't cook supper tonight, because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I must always think of him. You can try it on your family members and see how it works. It won't work. Or you could say, if you're going out to work, you could say, well, I'm not going to work today because Krishna says, you must always think of him. So I can't go to work and think of Krishna. That won't work. That is not Krishna's instruction to us. Rather, he's telling Arjuna, you must do your duty and also think of me. And Arjuna asks about that in the 10th chapter. I'm giving you trailers here for what's happening later in the Bhagavad Gita. It's good to give trailer. Some important points to what's coming later. Because I hope if we do this, then you'll be excited to study with us further. So with your activities dedicated to me and your intelligence fixed on me, this is our blueprint. Everything we do, we should offer it to Krishna. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that as son of Kunti as an offering unto me. Krishna says in 9th chapter, this is the blueprint. Perform your duty, offer it to Krishna, and always think of him. And then certainly we'll go to Krishna. So Krishna is emphasizing here in a different way. And then in 8, he who meditates upon me as the Supreme Personality of God in his mind, constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, Apati is sure to attain me. So Krishna is giving us assurance. These verses, assurance over and over again. Why Krishna want to convince us, don't think of anything else. Because if you think of something else, you will attain that state without fail. Because while we're in this body, we're generating the next body. As we think today, so we become tomorrow, not just in this life, but also in the next life as well. Whatever our thought process is now, that is generating another material body. So therefore, we have to be careful what we think. Therefore, the sum and substance of all religious knowledge has been explained to be, always think of Krishna, never forget him. That is the essence of all religious knowledge. And we can see it reflected in key verses in Bhagavad Gita. We just read some key verses. One who thinks of me alone, he will attain me without faith. He who meditates upon me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated. It's called Ananya Bhakti. Ananya means not mixed. It's like, you know, if you ting your bell when you're doing an offering, the bell is made of different metals. It is most prominently zinc and copper. And these two, you get a silver one and a copper one, you mix them together and you get this yellow color. So it's an alloy. It's a mixture of two metals. But if we want to be pure devotee, we can't mix it with anything. This is why Krishna discussed the Mishra Bhaktas in the previous chapter. Those who want relief from material distress, those who want money, those who are not inquisitive, they want knowledge. They're mixed, their devotion is mixed, but it helps. But if you're mixed, you can't get the full result. You have to become unmixed. So therefore, Krishna says, he who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly, that means all the time, engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path. He, O Partha, is sure to attain me. So Krishna is giving us clue in Bhagavad Gita. Because you know what? Who wants to stick around in this material world? Have you figured that out yet? It's not a nice place, actually. Prabhupada says, not a place for a gentleman or a gentle lady. Not a place, actually. He said, this is a little gross. You'll have to excuse me, but it makes the point so graphically. I'm simply paraphrasing Srila Prabhupada. He said, it's like the storeroom. You do your business and you get out. Why you want to stick around in this place? It's not nice, actually. Not a place for a lady or a gentleman. Okay, so in 9, actually, the conversation turns a little bit in a different direction. Actually, Kirtika, I want to ask you, do we give the students chapter summaries? Do we give them?
No, we don't, Prabhuji.
So I'm going to make them available to you, Kirtika. So when we start with a new chapter, because what Burijan Prabhu, who developed this overview of Bhagavad Gita course, he also produced 1-page summaries of each chapter. And we find that devotees find them very useful. So I'm going to make them available to you. So in this way as well, you'll be able to see the flow of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, how we're discussing this subject matter, and then it flows into another subject matter. And Krishna, so what we've done, see, I've got mine. This is my 8th chapter summary. I will make it available to you because it helps us to understand the sub-themes within a chapter and how one theme connects to another and why Krishna changes the mood of the verses now and why we begin to discuss something else. Like I explained, why this 8th chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. Why? Because Arjuna asked about that in the previous chapter. How can those who are your devotees know you at the time of death? So this is what we find, that the chapter titles and the themes, the sub-themes within the chapter, they change as the conversation goes between Arjuna and Krishna. So if we understand those sub-themes, it really helps us to understand the verses and the context. So I'm going to make them available to you, Kirtika. You can share them with everybody. Okay, mine is a little different because you can go back to Godhead by remembering Krishna. But there are 2 classes of yogis who can do that. One is the Yoga Mishra Bhakta. He was discussed in the 29th verse of the 7th chapter. He's a devotee, but he wants liberation from old age and death. I mean, who wouldn't want liberation from that, you know? I'm 64 next birthday, and I'm telling you, it's not fun being in a body that's so old. It's not fun. You can't do the stuff you did when you were 25. You can't run as fast, you can't lift as much, you can't think as well, you need glasses, you know, all kinds of horrible things happen to the body. Kirtika's touching hers as well, because she knows what I mean. I can't even read the Bhagavad Gita verses without my glasses. So this is what happened. The body deteriorates, you know, so who would want to stay in this material world? So we need to learn to meditate on Krishna. So these 2 classes of bhakta come next. The Yoga Mishra, the one who's a bhakta, but he wants liberation. He wants something for himself, and therefore it's mixed devotion. But there's also another caste of person who can attain Krishna at the time of death. He is the Ananya Bhakta, the one whose devotion is not alloyed. He doesn't want something. He just wants Krishna's lotus feet. He doesn't want something for himself. Actually, when we become very pure, we just want to please Krishna. Nothing else. We don't even want anything from Krishna. We just want to please him right now. So these two classes can attain Krishna, title of the chapter. But in these verses from 9 to 13, we're comparing them. So in 9, because now Krishna has told us we should attain him. No? So now we need to know how to do it. So Krishna is carefully obliging us. One should meditate on the Supreme Person as one who knows everything. Does Krishna know everything? How sure are you? Are you convinced?
Yes.
Kirtika's nodding your head. The rest of you I can't see. Yes, okay, we've got a thumb up here. Krishna is the supreme authority. He's the one who knows everything. He's the oldest. He's called, Lord Brahma calls him the Adi Purusham. Adi Purusham means the original person, the oldest person. He is the controller. Yes, he's the supreme controller. Actually, because even we're controllers a little bit, isn't it? It's like if you're a wife, you control your husband. Isn't it, Kirtika? She's not, she knows that. Actually, that is the secret. Do you know the secret of a good marriage?
Say yes to the wife.
This is strictly for the gentleman. Do you know the secret of a good marriage?
Say yes to everything.
I'm coming to you, Divesh. Don't worry. I just want to impart this very important knowledge to the gentlemen on this group. Do you know the secret of a good marriage? I will tell you now. It is very short. It is a sutra. Are you ready? The secret of a good marriage is yes, dear. Yes, dear. Right? The gentlemen know that. Divesh?
Very true.
You wanted to say something? Your hand is up.
Yeah, I had a question whilst you're just discussing this.
Well, we're just discussing how to have a good marriage.
Yes.
What is that, Divesh? How do we have a good marriage?
Yes, the answer is just say yes, dear, as you said.
Yes,
but,
dear. Sometimes
yes.
you need to say it a couple of times. Sometimes you need to say yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
But Prabhuji, I had another question. I just, before I forget, as you're saying, the Lord wants us to chant and remember and meditate him on every time and the thought process. But the problem I have sometimes is that Maya is so strong. And I don't know, is this a solution? Like, I was just thinking about it for the last 2 days, that it's sometimes you carry on doing your...
Only 2 days. I'm thinking about all the time. How is this Maya?
Well, the last 2 days, there's been this very strong, I don't know, this sense that comes along. I don't know if you experienced it, but it's quite strange. It's taking you to the wrong direction again.
Yes, don't worry, Divesh. I experience it all the time.
So, and then I'm just like, even if I'm going that direction, let me just keep on saying the Lord's name. Whichever direction I go, now it doesn't. So I just keep on trying to think about him all the time. I don't know.
That's good. That's Krishna's advice.
Is it? Huh? Because, and I don't know why, that all of a sudden you're going on a good path spiritually, and then all of a sudden you're being deviated. I don't understand.
Do you know why that is, Divesh?
No, Prabhuji.
That is because we have material attachments.
Mm.
There's no magic pill, That's our philosophy. It's as simple as that. Because we have material attachments, that is why we get deviated. That is what I was explaining. We're thinking of Krishna, we're thinking of Krishna, we're thinking of Krishna, and then we wind up thinking something else, and we can't figure out how that happened.
Correct.
We have material attachments.
And that happens, and it comes in phases. There are times where everything's okay, but there are times it's so strong,
yes,
trying to deviate you, that you can't even think or chant even properly or anything.
Yeah, that is because we have...
I don't know, do you experience the same thing? Or is it just...
Yes, I do, Divesh. If it's any consolation to you, yes, I also have the same problem.
Okay,
so
okay.
That's why practice is required.
Sure.
This Chanika Pandit, you may have heard of him. He was a great moralist. Do you know what he says?
No.
He says, repetition is the mother of memory.
Okay.
Repetition. If we keep repeating, eventually, because that's how it goes. Our process is Shravanam Kirtanam, and then what comes, Divesh, after that? Shravanam Kirtanam?
I'm not sure, Prabhu.
Vishnu Smaranam. Smaranam means to remember. So first, hear and chant, hear and chant, hear and chant, and then eventually Smaranam, we can remember.
We can remember.
Required. Practice, practice, practice.
But Prabhu, the problem with what you're saying, that's fine in theory, and we try and put in practice. But the problem is, then you're also practicing your things of Maya every day. So
then
you're also becoming an expert there as well.
Yeah, so therefore you have to pull your mind away from that. Therefore Krishna says, do you remember in 3rd chapter we studied that? We studied how to defeat lust. Do you remember? Devesh?
Yes, Prabhu.
Do you remember how Krishna was explaining in 3rd chapter how we defeat lust? Lust means the desire to enjoy this material nature. Do you remember how he said we should defeat it?
Chanting and hearing?
Good try, but not actually. Krishna says we should, by deliberate spiritual intelligence and regulating the senses. Regulate means that, be a little strict with yourself, because, we're materially conditioned now, so the gauges need some engagement. So we have to regulate it, and then we have to develop this spiritual intelligence so that we can tell this activity is spiritual, this activity is material. Therefore, I should do the spiritual one. Actually, in the beginning, it's easy. When it's present in our mind as thinking, then it's easy. When we catch the thought, must deviate it to Krishna's lotus feet. But once it becomes feeling, then it becomes more difficult. That's when you meditate on it. And then eventually it becomes willing. That's when you actually do it. So we have to become expert at arresting that process in the thinking stage. Therefore, we need deliberate spiritual intelligence so that when our mind starts to think of something material, we can immediately detect it. And then we take our mind away from that. That is the process. Prabhupada says thinking, feeling, willing. And it's easy at the thinking stage. It's more difficult at the willing stage, when it becomes, at the meditation stage, or the feeling stage. But once it becomes willing, then you can't stop it, actually, generally speaking. So we have to become expert at catching it at the thinking stage. So Devesh, can you see this is how it goes? That it becomes thinking?
That's very true. Thank you so much for that advice.
Feeling, willing. So you have to be aware. So Prabhupada says that a devotee is introspective, as a non-devotee is speculative. Should always be watching our consciousness, watching the mind. What is it doing now? That's the function of the intelligence. The intelligence has 2 facets. It has memory and discrimination. We can discriminate one thing from another, and using our memory and what we've learned, we can apply that discrimination to get a positive result. Is it all right, Devesh?
That's very true. Thank you so much.
Because the thing is, what's the use of our philosophy? We can't practice. We can't apply it to a situation. What's the use?
True. Thank you.
Okay, we will go on then. So Krishna in this verse is giving us ways to remember. Krishna's saying, you must remember me. Saying, good teacher, and then students can ask, well, how do I remember you? So Krishna gives it 10 things in this verse. Supreme person, one who knows everything, one is the oldest, one is the controller. Ishvara, Parama, Krishna. That is the first line of the 5th chapter of the Brahma Samhita. That is our Sampradaya Acharya. Lord Brahma is saying that. Krishna is the topmost controller. One is the controller who's smaller than the smallest. You know how small Krishna is. I'll come to you, Vinit, in a minute. Do you know how small Krishna is? I'm going to show you now. I have a nice picture here to show. Oh, it's telling me that I can't share.
Prabhuji, I'll let you share, Prabhuji.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking it's my group. It's your group.
No, I've put. You can share now.
Okay. The host. Yeah, I need to be the host. I'm not really the host. I'm just pretending to be the host.
Prabhuji, you can share. I have.
Okay. I'm coming now. Just now coming. Share screen. Okay. So can everyone see this picture?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So what do you notice whizzing around the Supersoul? And if anyone knows a little bit of physics, they'll know that.
Atoms.
No, they're actually electrons. They're electrons whizzing around the atom. So if they're the electrons, then how small is the Supersoul? Can fit inside the atom. So when Krishna says he's the smallest, he's not kidding. He can fit inside the atom, actually. Not kidding, because Krishna is present in every atom, actually. Okay, I'll stop sharing. You can become the host. I have to make you the host now, isn't it?
No, Prabhuji, it's okay. You can share anytime.
Okay, Vinit, we can ask you then. I'm sorry I kept you waiting so long, Vinit. What was it you wanted to say?
No worries. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Just we mentioned about the Maya. So
Yes.
Yes, you are trying to get away from Maya, but you do need Maya to survive, to have this physical form. So how do you attain, how do you control those, balance your Maya with your spiritual progress?
Okay. You see, first of all, let me correct you on one thing. We actually don't need Maya, but we think we do. We actually don't need Maya. We're trying to escape Maya's influence, actually. And the more we can project our consciousness onto Krishna, the less Maya effect will have on us. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do our duty, but we do it in consciousness of Krishna. That is why Srila Prabhupada has called our society the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because our goal is to be conscious of Krishna all the time. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do our duty. And when we become more and more conscious of Krishna, our duty will become very clear to us, because Krishna will reveal it to you. This is just like now in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is revealing to Arjuna, this is your duty and you need to do it. Because people are depending on us, isn't it? Vinit, in your household, people are depending on you?
Sorry?
In your household, are people depending on you?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So can you neglect them?
No.
No. Actually, first of all, your wife will get on your case if you try. Isn't it?
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. Have you written that sutra down, Vinit? Yes, dear.
I've got two elderly mothers to look after.
Okay. How do you say that in Hindi? Yes, dear.
Haji.
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 Haji Priya.
Yeah, Haji.
Priya.
So we translated this mantra into Hindi now. Haji.
Haji Priya.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so the thing is that as we meditate on Krishna more, as we make Krishna the focus of our lives more and more, it's not that we run away from our duty, but rather it becomes very clear to us and we become very expert at doing our duty nicely. So nicely, actually, that no one has a problem with us. So that actually we don't need the Maya, we just think we do, but rather we need consciousness of Krishna. And the more conscious we are, the more our duty will become clear to us. And meantime, we can ask devotees who we trust, devotees that we feel. Actually, when we're seeking advice from devotees, we need 5 things. We need to be very conscious of 5 things. If we're going to ask a devotee for guidance, the first thing is that devotee should be in good standing in their community. That is the first thing. They should be in good standing. The second thing is that you should feel that they're more advanced than you, that they know more about Krishna consciousness than you do. Then the next thing is you should feel a natural relationship with that devotee. You should feel drawn to them a little bit. No? Then the next thing is you should feel that devotee cares about you. And last, that should have nothing to gain by whatever they tell you when they question you. If these 5 things are present in a devotee, you can probably get help from them. You know, how to advance in Krishna consciousness in your particular situation, because everyone's situation is a little different. And ultimately, it means the spiritual master. We need a spiritual master. Just like any subject you learn, you need a teacher. Isn't it true, Vinit?
Yes.
You need a teacher, whatever it is you learn. So spiritually, we also need teacher. So in the beginning, we may go to devotees that have these 5 characteristics. You feel they're more advanced, they're in good standing. Natural relationship, they care about you, you've got nothing to gain by what they tell you. And take advice from them. If they know your situation, try and take some advice from them how to, be a little bit more Krishna conscious on a daily basis in your life. And ultimately, we need to come to the spiritual master. But if you follow this process, it will come. Krishna will come to you as the spiritual master eventually. Vinit, is it all right?
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, I better rush now, otherwise not going to get to verse 14 even before we finish the class. Okay, so these verses 10, 11, 12, 13 now describe the Mishra Bhakta, the one who can attain the Supreme if he leaves at the right time. And if he doesn't leave at the right time, he comes back. So this is the Mishra Bhakta, the one who's striving from release from birth and this death and old age. He's a devotee, but he's trying to get release from death and old age, actually. He's Mishra. He wants something along with his devotional service. So this personality is described here in these next verses. I'm just going to read them quickly because we want to get to 14 before the time runs out. One who at the time of death fixes his hair between the eyebrows and, by the strength of yoga, with an undeviated mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord with full devotion, he certainly attains to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Primary characteristic. 11. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter the Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one can attain salvation. So this is the Mishra Bhakta. The yogic situation is detachment from all sensual engagements. You put the material nature on one side. Don't engage the senses in the material nature. You don't even desire sense gratification. Closing all the doors to the senses, because the senses are like doors. You close the door, can you see through it? Well, it might be made of glass. Somebody might tell me that. It might be made of glass. But if it's not made of glass and you close the door, can you see through it? If you close the door, can anything come through it?
No.
No. So the senses are said to be like that. They're like doors. You can close them. Nothing can come through. This is what Krishna is saying. Closing all the doors to the senses and fixing the mind on the heart. Why the heart? Because that is the seat of consciousness. The chaita, the consciousness is in the heart, actually. And the life air at the top of the head. You have to raise the life air through the chakras to this place. It's called the Brahmarandra. If you put the body through there, then you go. No. The life air to the top of the head, one establishes himself in yoga. So this is a mechanical process to do it. It's a Mishra Bhakta's process. And then 13, this is yesterday's verse, I'm assuming. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the syllable, sacred syllable on the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality who quits his body, he will certainly reach the supreme planets. So this is the mechanical process which is engaged in by the Mishra Bhakta. Now we come to those devotees who actually, their process is very simple. They don't have to go through all this, fixing the life air at the top of the head and chanting the syllable Om and all these other things which Krishna's mentioned. It's not so complicated for us, actually. It's just very simple for us. Just think of me always, Krishna says. Fix your mind and intelligence upon me. Thus you will live with me always, Krishna says in 12th chapter. So this is our process. So this is 14th verse. I'm sorry it took so long to get there, but in order that we understand the progression that Krishna's gone through in this 8th chapter, it's important. Now this verse comes alive because now we're comparing. We're comparing Mishra Bhakta with pure devotee. What is the difference? So here we find in this verse. Ananya cheta satatam.
Ananya cheta satatam.
Yo me smarati tishtha.
Me smarati nishtyasha.
Tasyaham sulabha partha.
Tasyaham sulabha partha.
Nitya yuktasya yoginaha.
Nitya yogatasya yoginaha.
We'll do the word for word. Ananya chetaha.
Ananya chetaha.
Without deviation.
Without deviation.
It literally means not mixed with anything. The consciousness, the chaita, should not be mixed with anything. So without deviation. Of the mind.
Of the mind.
Yes, because the seat of the mind is finally the heart, coming from the consciousness. So therefore, ananya cheta, without deviation of the mind. Satatam.
Satatam.
Always.
Always.
Yaha.
Yaha.
Anyone who.
Anyone who.
Mam.
Mam.
Me.
Me.
Krishna's, Srila Prabhupada put it in brackets, so we just understand who's talking here. Now, it's not that it says, it's Krishna says. So he here means Krishna. So Prabhupada's put he, Krishna. Sorry, me, Krishna, excuse me. Smarati.
Smarti.
Remembers.
Remembers.
Smaranam becomes smarati. He remembers from the ending. Nityasaha.
Nityasaha.
Regularly.
Regularly.
Actually, Nityasaha literally means eternally, all the time. But the way of looking at that is regularly. Do it regularly. Tasya,
Tasya,
to him.
to him.
Aham,
Aham,
I am.
I am.
Who's speaking? Who's speaking?
Krishna.
Yes, Krishna's saying I here. I am. Sulabhaha,
Sulabhaha,
very easy to achieve.
very easy to achieve.
Partha,
Partha,
O son of Prita.
O son of Pritha.
Another way of knowing Arjuna. Arjuna is the son of Prita. Her name was given later as Kunti Devi. Originally, she was Prita. Nitya,
Nitya,
regularly,
regularly.
specifically all the time. Yuktasya,
Yuktasya,
engaged.
engaged.
Yoginaha,
Yoginaha,
for the devotee.
for the devotee.
For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Prita, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So you can repeat, for one who always remembers me
For one who always remembers me
without deviation,
without deviation,
I am easy to obtain,
I'm easy to obtain.
O son of Prita,
O son of Pritha,
because of his constant engagement
because of his constant engagement
in devotional service.
in devotional service.
Okay, it's a long purport. You see what I mean? That it's a very easy process for a devotee in principle. Of course, the practice is not so easy, but the principle is very, very easy. So we simply have to remember Krishna as much as possible, and we can have the rest. Ultimately, that should be constant remembrance, nitya, as Krishna is saying in this verse twice. Nitya saha, regularly, and nitya, regularly, all the time, constant engagement. Okay, this is quite a long purport, but we're going to try and get through it in the next 15 minutes. I'll do my best. This verse, if you have the purport, you can follow along with me. This verse especially describes the final destination attained by unalloyed devotees. We discussed that, not mixed with anything, only Krishna, nothing else, who serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhakti Yoga. Actually, you'll see later Krishna says, actually, it's the only way to attain me. You can only attain Krishna through bhakti, not through any other process. Previous verses have mentioned 4 kinds of devotees. I discussed this at length, actually. The distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and speculative philosophers. They're the mixed devotees. Different processes of liberation have also been described in chapters 1 to 6. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga. The principle of these yoga systems is have some bhakti added. There must be a little bit of bhakti, otherwise you can't attain success. Because the only way you can get success is through pleasing Krishna. And for that, bhakti is required. So even in these other processes, some little bit of bhakti is required to attain success, without any mixture of jnana, karma, or hatha. Because that is what is pure devotional service. It's not mixed with these things. As indicated by the word ananya chaitaha, the pure bhakti yoga, the devotee desires nothing but Krishna. That's the position we have to come to. Pure devotional service. We want nothing apart from Krishna's lotus feet. And as we grow in devotional service, that becomes more apparent to us, actually, that these other things that the material nature offers are insignificant, actually. I mean, right now, we may be a bit torn. You know, there's some material enjoyment, there's some spiritual enjoyment. But actually, as we advance, as we practice, the material enjoyment appears less and less attractive to us. That is the symptom of success in yoga practice, that it should become less and less attractive to you. A pure devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek oneness with the Brahma Jyoti or salvation or liberation from material entanglement. Why? Because the pure devotion is so wonderful that we can experience it in this body, and those other things appear insignificant. We can give the example, you know, if somebody just offers you rice for supper, just rice, not even any ghee, just rice. Is it attractive? Not so much, no? But if you get 4 sabjis and roti and, you know, gulab jamun, and will you be interested in just the rice on its own? You won't be interested. No. Why? Because the taste is higher. If you're offered the choice between those two, which will you take? You'll take all the subjects and the roti and the because it tastes better. So similarly, the same thing happens to a devotee. As they advance, actually the taste of the material nature becomes more and more insignificant and ultimately becomes distasteful, actually, because the pleasure we get from devotional service is so wonderful. A pure devotee does not desire anything. Why? Because he's completely satisfied by Krishna's service, because it's so wonderful. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkama. So kama means desire, and nish means none of that. No personal desire for enjoyment in this material nature, which means he has no desire for self-interest. No, not interested, because there's nothing to fulfill, because I'm completely satisfied by being engaged in Krishna's devotional service. Perfect peace belongs to him alone. No one else can have it, because that's how we're fashioned. We're fashioned to be in constant communion with Krishna in an exchange of pure love. Nothing else will satisfy. So only the bhaktas can get that. Not to them who strive for personal gain in this material world. You strive for personal gain, you'll never be satisfied. We all know that, actually. We all know, but we're kind of trying to avoid that understanding, but we all know. Whereas Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga has his own selfish interests. A perfect devotee has no desire other than to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? It's like if you love someone, we can take the example. This is the example the Acharyas give in the scripture. They say it's a bit like, it's not completely like, but it gives you an idea. It's a bit like the love exchange between a young boy and a young girl. When that love is fresh and new, what does each of the boy and the girl think of? Only. What do they think of?
Each other only.
Yes, they only think of the beloved, nothing else, actually. And when it comes to the beloved, they just want to please them. They don't think about, they just want, because they love the person so much, they want to please them. So the Acharyas give this example. Of course, as it goes on, that relationship goes on, it becomes jaded because the other person can't fulfill your desires. You're trying to fulfill theirs and they can't completely fulfill yours. So the relationship becomes jaded. But with the Supreme Personality of God, it's not like that. With the Supreme Personality of God, it's perfect exchange. Krishna fulfills all your desires to the max, and you are trying your best with whatever little you know, whatever you are, to try and do something to please Krishna. It's a perfect exchange, and all your desires get fulfilled beyond your wildest dreams, actually. And that doesn't mean then you can have a new BMW. It doesn't work like that. But rather your desire is only to please Krishna, nothing else, the beloved. A pure Therefore, the Lord says that for anyone who's unflinchingly devoted to him is easy to attain. Yeah, because you're not thinking of anything else. Just like a young boy and a young girl, they don't think of anything else. So if we think of nothing but Krishna, it's very easy to attain. Krishna will come running, actually, because he wants to please his devotee. A pure devotee always engaged in devotional service to Krishna in one of his various personal features. Yeah, because you can't serve the supreme unknown, undissociated, unknowable Brahman. If there's going to be service, then there have to be two other things. We just perform this exercise in logic. If there's service, there must be two other things. What are the two other things? This is called Nyaya. This is an exercise in logic. My wife is answering.
The servant.
There must be the servant and
Master.
the person is being served. Otherwise, where is the question of service? So if there's service, there must be a person who's serving, and there must be the person who's being served. So a pure devotee always engaged in devotional service in one of his various personal features. Otherwise, how is there an exchange? Krishna and his various previous expansions and incarnations, such as Rama and Nrsimha. There are so many others as well. And a devotee can choose to fix his mind in loving service to any of these transcendental forms of the Lord, because they're all Krishna, but they're Krishna in different mood. So some people may be attracted to Lord Nrsimha, some people may be attracted to Lord Ram, somebody may be attracted to Lord Krishna. It doesn't matter. It's all the Supreme Personality of God. It's your choice, actually. Such a devotee meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. You don't meet any of those problems, because the thing is that the desire is so pure, and Krishna's desire to please you is so pure that actually there's nothing left. There's no problem. actually. It's very easy. Whereas you don't have these problems of trying to fix the life air at the top of the head and control the mind and senses and all these other problems. Or, you know, the desire to get sucked away by some material desire, or the desire for knowledge, or the desire for material wealth. There's none of those problems in this system. Simply one is to just fix his mind on Krishna. But that sounds easy, but it's difficult, requires practice. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. Why is it easy? Because our senses are used to being engaged. All we have to do is switch them to engaging in Krishna's service. And it's so wonderful, actually. You don't have to artificially try to restrain them. So this yoga system Prabhupada is pointing out is so easy to perform because we're used to acting anyway. You're used to engaging our senses. So why not do it for Krishna? Why not do it for a permanent result? Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. That's what we preach, no? Just start with chanting Hare Krishna, that's all. So easy. Anyone in any situation can do it a little bit. I guarantee whoever you are and whatever going on in your life, you can find 10 minutes. Is that true? Everyone can find 10 minutes, no? So in 10 minutes, you can go once around your mala. Very easily, actually. And you'll feel the benefit. And then, you know, when you realize the benefit, then you want to go twice around your mala. So Prabhupada is just saying, you can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. Even you don't have to have a mala. You know, when you're having a meeting with your boss and he's driving you crazy, in your mind, you can chant Hare Krishna. No? Or the kids are driving you up the wall. In your mind, you can chant Krishna's holy name. No, there are no restrictions. Sorry? You can chant loudly so the children also copy you. That's what my wife is saying. So the point is, Prabhupada is pointing out, it is so simple. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made it so simple. We can go back to Godhead just by chanting Krishna's name. The Lord is merciful to all, but as we've already explained, he's especially inclined towards those who serve him without deviation. It's not partiality. It's simply helping according to the desire. Krishna helps one, whatever his desire, actually. You want to hide from Krishna, Krishna will help you. You want to be his devotee, it'll also help you. That's Krishna's impartiality. The Lord helps such devotees in various ways. As stated in the Vedas, Katha Upanishad 1:2-23, Yam evaisha vinute tena labas, tasyaisa atma vivunute tanam swam. One who is fully surrendered and engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as he is, because Krishna reveals himself. When we engage in his service, Krishna reveals himself. So therefore we can understand. Actually, there's no other way of getting to know Krishna. He has to reveal himself to you. And Krishna only responds to love. You love Krishna, he'll reveal himself to you. If you remain in your proud position and don't love Krishna, fine. And he stays behind his curtain of delusion. One who is fully surrendered, engaged in the devotional service of the Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as he is. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Dadi Buddhi Yogam Tam. I reveal the Lord gives sufficient understanding. He gives the intelligence by which we can come to him. You show little endeavor, Krishna will reveal himself a little bit. And he'll give you guidance how to come. It works like that. I'm living proof of that, actually. Little by little, Krishna will give you the guidance, actually. This is what you must do. Krishna helps his devotees. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual Krishna. Krishna helps. When you start, you won't believe how much he helps. Because Krishna is trying to get us all come back to the spiritual world, not because he needs us. There's a few billion spirit souls out there. He doesn't need us. But because it's good for us, Krishna helps. Okay, the special qualification of the pure devotee is always thinking of Krishna without deviation and without considering time or place. The devotee doesn't care, actually, always thinking of Krishna no matter what. We need to practice to come to that platform. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that devotees should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or holy town where the Lord lived. But a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. If a Sri Advaita had told Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are, there is Vrindavan. Because Krishna is Vrindavan. So Krishna is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, that place is Vrindavan. Wherever a pure devotee goes, that place is Vrindavan. because there is no difference, actually. They are made of spiritual nature. So we don't have to go anywhere special. You know, it's just not, you can say, well, I can't be a devotee because I can't go to Rishikesh or Hardwar or go live in a cave, you know, at the source of the Ganga. No, this process is so wonderful. We can stay at home and we can tell our wife, yes, dear, and we can chant in our beads. Oh, no. Very simple, actually. As indicated by the words Satyam and Nitya Shaha, which means always, regularly, or every day, a pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates on him. These are the qualifications of the pure devotees for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is the system, and the Gita recommends the above ways. Sama Bhaktaha, engaged in devotional... Sorry, I think I missed something there. I'm going to go back to that. The Lord always... Bhakti Yoga is the system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. So these are the 5 relationships which Krishna is going to give here. The exchanges that these liberated souls have with Krishna. They are, first, Shanta Bhakta, engaged in service in neutrality. In other words, they admire Krishna from a distance. These are the yogis. They meditate on Krishna. They admire. They love Krishna from a distance. Then there's the Dasya Bhakta. Dasya means servant. So they engage in the relationship. They want the perfect master. So therefore they try to become the perfect servant so that Krishna will reciprocate with them. Dasya Ras. Then we come to engage in devotional service as a servant. Then Sakya Bhakta, this relationship of friendship, it's equals. Arjuna is a devotee like that. They sat on the same bed. They ate from the same plate, you know. And Krishna would say, oh Yadava, oh Krishna, like that, like he's equal, like that. Friendship is a platform of equals. Then engage as a friend. 4, that's Salya Bhakta, engage as parent. This is a bit sweeter, a bit higher. Why? Because Krishna becomes subservient. Your children are supposed to be subservient to you. I don't know how it's working in your household. Some parents are smiling now because they know how that works sometimes. But it's supposed to be that the child is subservient. So Krishna becomes subservient to his parent. Krishna will do that for his devotee. You want a relationship of mother-son with me? Fine. Let's have that relationship. I'll be a bit naughty though, Krishna says, because you have to have that in the mother-son relationship. Engaged as a parent. Then 5, Madhurya Bhakta, based on Madhu, meaning very sweet, conjugal exchange, actually. So any of these 5 relationships can be obtained with the Supreme Lord as conjugal lover. But generally speaking, what happens is we have one of those relationships already, but we simply, by the practice of our devotional service, it becomes revealed to us. It becomes uncovered. Okay, quickly now to the end of the chapter because I'm already 2 minutes over. The Supreme, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotees always constantly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord. And so for him, the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of this Krishna conscious process of chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So Prabhupada said can begin simply. In the what he was saying, just begin simply in the second paragraph. Just chant this holy name. And this is where it winds up. It winds up that you engage in a deeply satisfying and loving exchange based on one of these 5 principles. That is how it ends up, simply by chanting the holy name. So this is sum and substance of Bhagavad Gita is given in this verse. Always think of me, no? And remember me always, don't forget me. And then surely you'll come to me. I can promise you this, Krishna tells Arjuna, because you're my very dear friend. I promise you. Just give up all your dharmas. Krishna says that at the end. So much dharma explained in Bhagavad Gita. So many Vedic processes of purification. And Krishna said, just give it all up. Just become my devotee and surrender to me. And everything will be right. So it's a very essential verse, this one. And the 2 other corollary verses here to underline the point. You'll see that from the class giver tomorrow and Monday. 2 corollary verses. This is the principle of the Bhagavad Gita. Always remember me, never forget me. Okay, it's the comment or question. I'm sorry I've gone 4 minutes over, but it was a lot to get through. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
Hare Krishna, and you had interruptions. So
But that's fair enough, because, you know, when devotees ask questions, I like to stop and answer them immediately so they don't forget, you know.
Hare Krishna, are there any questions or comments?
Comments.
Hare Krishna, Kritika Mataji.
Hare Krishna,
Oh,
Mataji.
Krishna Smita, how are you?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I'm fine, thank you. Pranam, Dandavad, Prabhuji. I've got, slightly confused this week. So the one question was, if you go back to Godhead, will you ever come back? The answer is no, you won't come back. So then the other bit is, when Krishna, you exhale and you inhale. And then, so when he annihilates, I can't pronounce the word. So all the particles, we all go back in his body.
Yes, we're all reabsorbed into Mahavishnu at the time of the total devastation. Yes.
So when he then, when he then starts...
exhale, when he breathes out, yes?
Yeah. So then the other souls will come out, whatever you... So does that include that soul that went back to Godhead?
No. If you go back to Godhead, you're no longer in the material world. You don't get absorbed back into the body of Mahavishnu, and you don't come out again when he breathes out. You go back to the spiritual world, and it's permanent.
Okay, thank you. That's where I was getting slightly confused.
No, we don't. Those souls that go back, they're not perfect. They're held within the body of Mahavishnu while he's breathing in. And then when he breathes out again, they're put into the situation which is perfect for their karma.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, then when you go back to Godhead, and if Krishna wants you to come back, or to not to Earth or any other planet, you would be sent there. It's not that your permanent position is in back to Godhead.
So if we go a little deeper, we go a little deeper. You see, it is true that devotees, actually, when they're almost perfect, they go to a place where Krishna's performing his pastimes, and they engage in Krishna's pastimes in order to become completely perfect. That's true. It's also true that when Krishna comes from the spiritual world, he brings an entourage with him. That's also true. But the general rule is that when we've gone back to Godhead, we don't come back. But it's also true that sometimes we may come back to help Krishna with his pastimes. Like, for instance, when one of my god sisters left her body, my spiritual master wrote a letter to her, you know, kind of an open letter to instruct everybody through her passing, because she went back to Godhead. So my spiritual master told her that it's so wonderful that you have achieved the perfection of human life. Now he said, you have three options open to you. You can go to the spiritual world. You can go to the material world where Krishna is performing his pastimes, or you can come back and take birth in ISKCON and preach. And he said, all these things are the same. Because the thing is, when we become perfect soul, whether in the material world or spiritual world, doesn't matter. We see it all as the same, because we become perfect. But having said all that, the general rule is that we go back and we don't come back. The coming back to help Krishna with his pastimes is a special thing. And usually it's Krishna's inner circle that do that. Is that all right, Kirtika?
So Prabhuji, when you go back to Godhead, won't you be performing the pastimes in Golok Vrindavan?
Not necessarily Goloka Vrindavan, but in our sampradaya is very, very special. Generally, there are two destinations in our sampradaya, and Lord Balaram decides that, because Lord Balaram is the presiding deity of the jivas. We are squirted into the material nature by Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is an expansion of Lord Balaram. So he is the presiding deity of the jivas. When we become perfect in our sampradaya, we generally go one of two ways. We either go into Balaram's party, in which case it is Sakyaras, it is cowherd boy. But under exceptional circumstances, you may go to Radharani's party. If you go to Radharani's party, then you will assist the divine couple with their pastimes. So this is broadly what happens. Vatsalya Ras, the relationship of parent, is not considered so prominent in our sampradaya because it doesn't really fit. The main thing in our sampradaya is Madhurya. It's very special. Normally you don't get that. The main thing is Madhurya, a conjugal relationship with Krishna. So therefore it doesn't really go with Vatsalya. It's like, when you were growing up and you were dating, do you come home and tell your mother all about your conjugal affairs with your boyfriend? Do you tell? No, you don't tell actually. It's kind of private. You keep it to yourself. Because the parental ras and the conjugal ras don't fit well together. They don't fit together actually. Therefore in our sampradaya it's not prominent. In our sampradaya we either go Sakya ras or we go Madhurya ras. And the other ones we're not, because we're devotees of Lord Chaitanya, who is the non-different from Radha and Krishna, it's the gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give that. We serve in Dasya Ras, but it's the gift of Mahaprabhu that he gives that transcendental Madhurya Ras in the spiritual world. Anyway, this is a few things to consider. Ketuka, it's kind of deep. It's deep truths of our sampradaya. Is it all right?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other question or comments?
Okay, looks like we're done then. No?
Okay, then Mansi Ganga Mataji is unmuted. Mataji?
I was going to fall off to go to sleep. I'd like to thank all the participants like Ravi and Pundrik Prabhu and Artha Priya, who have taken the time to be with us. Anyway, thank you very much. My eyes are closing. I'm off. Hare Krishna.
Quite late.
I'm sorry I'm disturbing you.
No, don't be funny. Haripriya. Haripriya also has come on the Zoom today. I'm very happy that she stayed with us the whole time.
And Narmada.
Narmada, I forget her always. Yeah, Narmada also from the UK.
And we have today Vraj Kishori Mataji Haribol. Thank you for joining this group. They are both her and Prabhuji are from London. So thank you for joining this group. Okay, let's, I really apologize for the 11 minutes overrun.
That's my fault. It's not Kartika's fault. Kartika's fault. It's my fault. I apologize for that.
Okay, let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once to glorify Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare Ram, Rama Hare
Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai. Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji ki Jai.
Anantapuri Vaishnava ki Jai.
Vanchakalpatarubhasya Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.